Hey, my name is Brandon Caliber. Today I'm going to be telling you the story about how I was robbed in LA at gunpoint while shopping at the Supreme store. Back in 2016 to about 2019, I feel like all of us had a bit of a cringe hypebeast era where we were into brands like Supreme and Antisocial Club and Bape. And as a teenager, I was super into this stuff. So my closet was full of all the Supreme and the Bape and all the Jordans and just everything that was hot at the time. Yeezys were huge at the time, and so a big thing for somebody living in LA that is young like me is to go to the Supreme store and camp out and try and get the latest products. So in 2017, I went to the Supreme store at around 5 in the morning to try and get the latest drop. This was actually the drop where they were releasing the Supreme Money Gun, and I did want to get that, but I also just wanted to get some clothes for the summer. So I wake up at like 4 in the morning to make my way over to the Supreme store because it's about an hour away from my house, and I figured 5 a.m. would be a good time to get there because realistically, who's going to go and sit outside the store at 5 a.m. when it wasn't even like a huge drop or anything? There wasn't like some big collaboration. So I park about 3 blocks down away from the store because a lot of the parking was taken for people that are just staying places overnight, and presumably some of the people that are in line at the Supreme store. I walk over to the store and there's probably about 40 people in line in front of me, which was pretty surprising to me. This was my first time ever going to one of these, but I could not believe that there was people that had woken up earlier than me just to go to this drop that wasn't even that exciting. So I'm perched up, I sit in this line from 5 a.m. I don't even think I got into the store until around 12 because a lot of the people that were in the front of the line actually let their family and friends come later and join them in line, so it ended up taking a lot longer than it really should have. When I went in the store, I probably spent about $400. I got the Supreme Money Gun, I got some shorts, I got some shirts, just some pretty basic stuff, but I needed clothes for the summer and that's what was hot at the time. For most of the time that I was sitting in line once the sun came up, it was probably about 100 degrees outside too, so I was really sweating it out. I didn't bring a chair or prepare in any kind of way like that like a lot of other people did. I figured I would just sit on the street or just stand the whole time, and that's what I did. So I mean, I was sweating. It was a lot of effort to stand in that line for as long as I did. So after I bought everything, I made my way out of the store and I started walking over to my car, which again, it was like 3 or 4 blocks away from the store. You couldn't actually see the store from it, so it was probably about a 5-minute walk away. And I make my way down. I mean, I have this big white bag that has a big red Supreme logo on it because that's the bags they give you there. And I'm walking to the car. Everything seems pretty normal, but I do want to get to the car quickly just because it's LA. You know, you never know what could happen in LA. Eventually, after what felt like forever, I found my car and I unlocked it and everything seemed fine. I opened the back seat of the car first so I could put the bag in because it was a pretty large bag. So I'm putting the bag in the back seat, and that's when everything gets pretty crazy. As I'm leaning into the car, I hear somebody say behind me, "Give me everything that's in the bag!" And immediately, I'm filled with fear and a little bit of anger as well because of how hard I had worked just to get these items. So I turn around and there's a very tall, built dude standing there with a pistol pointed right at me. It's probably pointed at my chest or my stomach area. It's like a chrome-plated pistol, it seemed like, and he's just staring at me, telling me to give me everything in the bag, and he's referring to the Supreme bag. Now, I had a backpack on me that had a bunch of snacks and water in it, so that would have been useless to him, but he didn't know there was nothing in there. This guy didn't want my wallet, he didn't want my phone, he didn't want my backpack, he didn't want anything except for the Supreme bag. So I mean, I'm not going to risk my life over some Supreme, even if I did wait all day for it. So I gave him over the bag. He ran away from me, about 2 blocks, sprinted away, and jumped in this white Hyundai that was full of like 5 other people in it. After he ran away and I got in the car and had a chance to collect my thoughts, I was really more angry than anything because I knew I was safe at this point. And I'd spent all of the money that I had from my last paycheck on this. I spent all of my time that day and all the effort to try and get the items that I wanted to get. So it was a really upsetting and frustrating situation. Because I was so angry, I wanted to get justice on these people, so I called 911. Now, mind you, this is Los Angeles. I assume they get a lot of 911 calls, but I did not expect what happened next. I pick up the phone, I dial 911, and the first thing that the phone says to me is, "All operators are currently busy. Please call back later." I try to call back a couple more times. It says the same thing, and I've never had to call 911 in my life, so I didn't know if this was like normal, but it really seemed like it's not normal. I mean, you would assume that 911 would just answer the phone because it's an emergency line. I mean, what if somebody was bleeding out and dying? I mean, like, what do you do in that situation if the police don't even answer the phone? So I gave up on that. I tried calling the police stations. They said they couldn't do anything about it. I eventually got to the right one. They said they'll send an officer out. I waited for half an hour. Nobody was there. I just started driving around. I figured nobody was coming and I just wanted to go home at this point. I eventually ran into a cop and I basically just honked at this officer until they pulled over. I told them everything that happened. They had me fill out a police report. They said they would get back to me when they have more information. And to this day, I have never heard back from them in any capacity. You could imagine that this is something that happens all the time and they don't care about just one person getting robbed in LA when, I mean, really they should, but they have so much crime going on in the city that they just do not care. Those same officers told me that this happens at Supreme all the time and that they haven't caught anybody for it, so I'm assuming it happened to more people on that same day as well. Now, you may think this is where the story ends, but things actually got very interesting on my way home. So, I was pretty angry, like I mentioned before. I was a young kid, so I was driving really fast on the way home. I mean, I was swerving out of some cars, and I got pulled over by an undercover police officer who's wearing the cowboy hat, and you know those guys don't mess around. This guy walks up to my window after pulling me over on the shoulder and says, first thing out of his mouth, he says, "Do you want to go to jail today?" Now, I think luck was just on my side at this point. I explained to the officer everything that had just happened to me and showed him the police report because I had a physical copy of it. And I was just explaining everything even though he was pissed. And he let me off with a warning. I'm so grateful for that to this day because I'm sure he could have taken me to jail or towed my car or given me a huge ticket. So I think he just understood that I was in a state of panic and that I was just... I mean, I'm sure he knew I was angry, but I think I seemed more fearful in the situation. After all of this went down, I posted a message on social media and sent it to a bunch of Supreme pages. It went viral, I gained a bunch of followers, and I got offered an interview from Complex. I'm sure you all know Complex. They're big into the music culture and the fashion culture and everything like that, so it was a pretty big thing, and I didn't care about getting clout or anything. I just wanted to get the message out there that this can happen to people because there's no news stories online about it, and there's a lot of young kids, I mean kids that were younger than me that went to these Supreme drops. So I really wanted to do this interview just to spread the word on the subject. So I met up with Complex in LA. We did a full interview and they were about to air the interview and I had posted about it on my Instagram and I received a threatening text to my phone, like straight directly to my phone number that was essentially threatening me to delete the interview and not have it posted at all or these people are gonna come for me. Now listen, looking back on it, it was probably someone from my high school who was just trolling me and wanted to mess with me and put some fear in me. But at the time, I thought that it really could have been the people that robbed me and somehow got my phone number and were sending these threats to me. So I had the interview pulled before it was ever posted to Complex. I really wish I could see it to this day because it never got posted. And, you know, I was a 17-year-old kid. I didn't know any better to just have the thing aired anyways. I didn't know any better to report the thing to the cops, like all those text messages, because, I mean, the cops really let me down in this story overall. So I just didn't think that was the move. But yeah, that is basically where this story ends. I have a lot more crazy stories I can tell growing up in LA. If you want to see more stories from me, please hit the subscribe button below. Leave a comment, tell me what your favorite part of the story was, and I will see you in the next one.